The Draxian High Command floated in their gravity-free council chamber, their elongated bodies pulsing with bioluminescent patterns of satisfaction. For 3 centuries, they had ruled this sector of the galaxy with unquestioned authority. Their warfleets had subjugated 17 species across 42 star systems. The tribute flowed endlessly: resources, technology, and slaves. Admiral Vex, the most decorated military mind in Draxian history, addressed the council. The Talari resistance has been crushed. Their homeworld's defenses collapsed after just 6 days of bombardment. The species will be processed for labor distribution within the month. The High Chancellor's body glowed in approval. Excellent. And what of the anomaly detected near the border of the Krell expanse? A minor concern, Vex replied, his tentacles waving dismissively. Our deep space sensors detected an unknown vessel emerging from uncharted space. Its design matches nothing in our databases. Origin? Asked the Minister of Intelligence, her chromatophores shifting to a curious yellow. Unknown. It bears no markings we recognize. Initial scans suggest primitive technology. They still utilize reaction propulsion for sublight travel. Hardly worth our attention. The council chamber filled with the equivalent of Draxian laughter, pulses of bright red light emanating from their core bodies. These lesser species never learn, said the War Minister. Send a standard subjugation fleet. 3 warships should be sufficient to capture or destroy the intruder. Admiral Vex bowed, his body curving into the traditional gesture of compliance. As you command, Captain Morks will lead the expedition. His record against primitive vessels is unblemished. Captain Morks considered this assignment beneath him. His massive dreadnought, the inevitable Dominion, was the pride of the Draxian fleet. Its quantum disruptors could atomize a small moon. Its shields had withstood direct hits from the most advanced weapons the Draxians had ever encountered. Being sent to intercept some unknown primitive vessel felt like an insult. Sir, we've established visual contact with the alien vessel, his sensor officer reported. Morks's 6 eyes blinked in sequence as the holographic display activated. The alien ship was disappointingly plain, a long, gunmetal gray cylinder with minimal external features. It was perhaps 1/8 the size of his dreadnought. Pathetic, Morks said. Open a dominance channel. Let's see what we're dealing with. The communications array hummed as the Draxian message of submission was broadcast. The standard ultimatum delivered to all new species. Surrender, serve, or die. Minutes passed. No response. They're either stupid or insolent, Morks said. Power, weapons. Let's give them a demonstration of Draxian might. The inevitable Dominion surged forward, flanked by 2 smaller but still formidable warships. The quantum disruptors charged, preparing to deliver a warning shot that would obliterate a small section of the intruder's hull. Just as Morks gave the order to fire, his sensor officer cried out, Captain, we're detecting a massive energy spike from the alien vessel. Impossible, Morks replied. Our scan showed no weapon signatures. The alien ship remained motionless as the Draxian fleet approached. No visible weapons deployed, no shields activated. It simply hung there, a gray cylinder, against the backdrop of stars as if waiting. Morks felt the first stirrings of unease in his central ganglia. Something was wrong. The energy readings were off the scale now, and yet the vessel showed no external changes. Fire, he ordered. But before the quantum disruptors could discharge, the void between the ships seemed to fold. In the next instant, a blinding white beam lanced out from the alien vessel, slicing through the leftmost Draxian warship as if it were made of vapor. The ship didn't explode. It simply ceased to exist. The Draxian High Command's emergency session convened within hours of the disaster. Admiral Vex's body had lost all color, fading to the dull gray of extreme distress as he delivered his report. The inevitable Dominion barely escaped, he said, his voice trembling with an emotion Draxians rarely experienced. Fear. Captain Morks reports that the alien weapon doesn't match anything in our database. It doesn't disintegrate matter or cause conventional explosions. According to the survivors, it removes things from existence. Clarify, demanded the High Chancellor. The weapon created what our scientists can only describe as a localized space-time excision. The affected warship and the space it occupied were simply gone. No debris, no radiation signature, just a perfect vacuum where matter once existed. The council chamber fell silent. Such technology was theoretical at best. The Draxians, for all their dominance, had never developed anything close to it. And the alien vessel's response to our communication? Asked the Minister of Intelligence. They sent one message after the attack. Text only, in perfect Draxian. Script. Admiral Vex hesitated. Continue, ordered the Chancellor. It said, "Your terms are rejected. Withdraw from this sector immediately. You have one standard rotation to comply." The War Minister's body flashed angry red. Preposterous. One primitive vessel dares to threaten the Draxian Empire? Assemble the Grand Fleet. Within 12 hours, 50 Draxian warships converged near the border of the Krell expanse. The alien vessel remained where it was, seemingly unconcerned by the armada assembling before it. Fleet Commander Zax, the most decorated tactician in the Empire, devised what he believed to be an infallible strategy. The Draxian ships would attack from multiple vectors simultaneously, overwhelming the alien vessel's mysterious weapon with sheer numbers. Even if this weapon can erase one ship at a time, he explained to his captains, it cannot target 50 at once. Victory through superior numbers is inevitable. The Draxian fleet moved into attack formation. Quantum disruptors charged. Graviton missiles armed. Space-folding mines deployed in a three-dimensional grid around the alien vessel. The enemy ship remained motionless. "Attack!" ordered Commander Zax. 50 ships unleashed their firepower simultaneously. The space around the alien vessel became a maelstrom of destructive energy. Planet-killing weapons converged on a single point. When the energy discharge dissipated, the commanders expected to see nothing but scattered atoms. Instead, the alien vessel remained intact, surrounded by a faint, shimmering field that hadn't been there before. "Impossible," whispered Commander Zax. "No shield can withstand such firepower." Before the Draxians could regroup, the alien vessel began to change. Panels slid open along its hull, revealing what were unmistakably weapon ports. But instead of firing, a voice transmitted across all Draxian communication channels. "This is Captain James Reed of the United Earthship Reckoning. Your attack has been classified as an act of war against humanity. Strategic response authorized." The voice was flat, emotionless, and terrifyingly calm. Then the Reckoning moved. It didn't accelerate gradually as any normal ship would. One moment it was stationary. The next it was among the Draxian fleet, moving with impossible speed and precision. What followed wasn't a battle. It was execution. The Draxian ships, the pride of an empire that had known only victory for centuries, fell one after another. Some vanished into nothingness as the strange white beam touched them. Others seemed to implode, collapsing in on themselves as if crushed by an invisible hand. Within minutes, half the fleet was gone. News of the defeat spread throughout the Draxian Empire with the speed of quantum communication. Species that had been subjugated for generations whispered among themselves. Was the unthinkable finally happening? Was the great empire vulnerable? In the Draxian homeworld's capital, panic had replaced arrogance. The High Council gathered in their deepest, most secure bunker, their bodies pale with fear. "What exactly are we facing?" demanded the High Chancellor, addressing the Empire's leading xenobiologist. Dr. Lore, Chief of Draxian Evolutionary Research, activated a holographic display. "We've analyzed the limited data available on these humans. They appear to be carbon-based. Bipeds originating from a high-gravity world with a nitrogen-oxygen atmosphere. Physically, they seem unimpressive. No natural weapons, limited sensory capabilities, average lifespans of less than a century." "Then how have they developed such technology?" the War Minister interrupted. "The weapon that erases matter from existence, the shields that withstood our entire fleet's firepower." Dr. Lore's body pulsed with uncertainty. "That's what's most concerning. Their ship's design suggests a civilization that should be, at most, a few hundred years into their technological development. They shouldn't have faster-than-light travel, let alone weapons that manipulate the fabric of reality. Could they have stolen this technology from another species? Asked the Minister of Intelligence. Dr. Lore hesitated. Unlikely. The technology appears fully integrated into their ship's design. More concerning is what our long-range scans have detected in the space beyond the Krell expanse. The holographic display shifted to show a vast starfield. Dr. Lore zoomed in on a specific region, where thousands of small lights were visible. More human ships? Gasped the Chancellor. Yes. An armada orders of magnitude larger than the one we lost. They appear to be holding position, waiting. Throughout the Empire, the remaining Draxian military scrambled to prepare. Ancient weapons were pulled from storage. Experimental shields were hastily installed on the remaining warships. The High Command even considered deploying the forbidden quantum cascade device, a weapon of last resort that could destabilize an entire star system. Meanwhile, on the human warship Reckoning, Captain James Reed sat quietly in his command chair, reviewing the battle data. The ship's AI, Athena, provided a holographic analysis of the Draxian fleet's capabilities. Their technology is approximately 200 years behind ours, Athena reported. Impressive for their stage of development, but no match for a Centurion-class battleship. Reed nodded. A 20-year veteran of the Earth Defense Force, he had seen much in his career, but the Draxians' arrogance had surprised even him. Any update from command? Admiral Hayes reports the fleet is in position. They await your assessment. Reed stared at the tactical display showing the Draxian Empire's borders. 17 subjugated species across 42 systems. Billions of sentient beings living under tyranny. Send this message to the Draxian High Command. We've analyzed your empire. We've counted your ships. We've measured your weapons. You have built your dominion on the suffering of others, believing yourselves invincible. You were mistaken. Humanity has come. You have 12 hours to release control of all subjugated worlds and withdraw your forces. After that, we will remove you. The message was transmitted in perfect Draxian script, along with detailed scans of the human fleet waiting beyond the Krell expanse. 5,000 warships, each equal to or greater than the Reckoning in firepower. On the Draxian homeworld, the High Chancellor read the ultimatum with trembling appendages. For the first time in the Empire's history, they were considering surrender. Perhaps we can negotiate, suggested the Commerce Minister. Offer them some of our outer systems, technological exchange. No, interrupted an ancient voice. All eyes turned to Elder Crix, the oldest living Draxian and keeper of the Empire's deepest secrets. You do not understand what we are facing. Elder Crix's body pulsed with the deep blue of profound knowledge as he addressed the council. For decades, he had served as the keeper of forbidden history, truths deemed too dangerous for the general population. The humans, Crix began, his voice frail but commanding, are not unknown to us. Our ancestors encountered them over 7 centuries ago, during the early expansion of our empire. Shocked murmurs rippled through the council chamber. The High Chancellor's chromatophores flashed, in disbelief. Impossible. Our historical records contain no such encounter. Because they were purged, Crix replied. By unanimous decision of the council that ruled then. What I tell you now has been passed down orally among us keepers, from generation to generation. Crix activated an ancient data crystal, and holographic images materialized. Crude by modern standards, but unmistakably showing primitive Draxian ships encountering a small vessel of unfamiliar design. 700 years ago, our ancestors discovered a planet in an unremarkable yellow star system. Its dominant species were these bipeds, humans. They had just begun to explore their own solar system using chemical rockets. Primitive, barely worth notice. The council of that era decided to establish an observation post rather than immediate conquest, to study these creatures before eventually adding them to our empire. The holographic display shifted to show time-lapse images of human development. What our ancestors witnessed defied all evolutionary models. The humans advanced from planetary rockets to interplanetary travel in less than a century, from splitting the atom to controlled fusion in mere decades. Their scientific development accelerated at a rate that alarmed our observers. "But how?" asked the science minister. "No species evolves technology at such speeds." "It wasn't their biology," Crix explained. "It was their psychology. These humans possess a unique combination of traits our analysts found disturbing: extreme creativity, paired with unreasonable persistence. When faced with problems that would cause any rational species to accept defeat, humans simply refused to yield. They would try countless approaches, each more unorthodox than the last, until they succeeded. And their internal competition, their constant wars and rivalries, only accelerated this process. The holographic images now showed human history, crude weapons evolving into increasingly sophisticated ones, vehicles transforming from simple ground transports to space vessels. The council of that era made what they believed was the only logical decision. Before the humans could advance further, our fleet struck their homeworld, targeting their largest population centers and military installations. Our intention was not extermination, but rather to set their development back by centuries, allowing us time to prepare for eventual integration. Crix's body dimmed to a somber gray. We thought we had succeeded. Their planet was devastated. Our observers reported their civilization had collapsed. The observation post was withdrawn, and the incident was stricken from our records to prevent any species from learning that the great Draxian Empire had struck out of fear rather than strength. The council chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. "But now they've returned," whispered the High Chancellor. "Yes," said Crix, "and they have clearly not forgotten. The name of their ship, Reckoning, is no coincidence. They remember what we did to their world centuries ago, and they have come for justice." Aboard the Reckoning, Captain Reed studied the detailed scans of the Draxian homeworld. Its cities were architectural marvels, its oceans clean and teeming with life. Billions of Draxians went about their daily lives, most unaware of the crisis unfolding. "Captain," reported his communications officer, "we're receiving a transmission from the Draxian High Command." Reed nodded. On screen, the holographic projector revealed the Draxian High Chancellor, body dimmed to the cultural signifier of formal deference. "Captain Reed," the Chancellor began, "we wish to discuss terms of accommodation." Reed's expression remained impassive. The terms were clear: full independence for all subjugated worlds, complete withdrawal of Draxian forces. Such terms would destroy our economy, our way of life. We request negotiation. Your way of life has been built on the suffering of 17 other species. Reed interrupted. That ends today. The refugee crisis began almost immediately. As word spread that the Draxian Empire was on the brink of collapse, populations on subjugated worlds seized the opportunity. Resistance movements that had operated in shadows for generations suddenly emerged in full force. Draxian outposts found themselves surrounded. Colonial governors fled for their lives. On the planet Nerix, the native Borrelians, squat, four-armed beings who had served as manual labor for over a century, stormed the governor's palace using nothing but agricultural tools. The Draxian garrison, receiving no reinforcements from the stretched imperial forces, surrendered within hours. Similar uprisings occurred across the empire. On some worlds, the revolution was peaceful. Draxian administrators simply evacuated, knowing their empire could no longer protect them. On others, centuries of resentment erupted into violence. The Draxian High Command watched helplessly as their dominion crumbled. Admiral Vex, once the Empire's most decorated military mind, now faced the impossible task of coordinating an empire-wide withdrawal with insufficient ships and personnel. "The southeastern quadrant is completely lost," he reported to the council. "We cannot extract our people fast enough. Thousands of Draxians are being taken prisoner." The High Chancellor, once regal and imposing, seemed to have physically shrunk. "And the humans? Have they launched their attack?" "No," Vex replied. "Their fleet remains in position. Only the reckoning has moved, traveling from system to system, apparently observing the uprisings. They seem to be watching us fall apart. Meanwhile, Captain Reed and a small diplomatic team had made contact with leaders from the liberated species. In a hastily arranged conference aboard the Reckoning, representatives from 12 formerly subjugated worlds gathered, the first free multi-species assembly in centuries. Tark, a towering crystalline being from the silicon-based Mentak species, addressed Reed with a mixture of gratitude and suspicion. "We thank humanity for breaking the Draxian yoke, but we must ask, what do you want in return? No one acts without self-interest." Reed's response surprised the gathered delegates. "We want nothing from your worlds or peoples. Humanity's interest is in a stable, peaceful galaxy where all sentient species determine their own destiny." "Forgive my skepticism," said Gala, a reptilian prel whose scales bore the scars of Draxian control implants. "But your ships, your weapons, they suggest a species built for war, not peace." Reed nodded in acknowledgement. 700 years ago, the Draxians attacked Earth, our homeworld, without warning or provocation. Our civilization was nearly destroyed. We rebuilt from the ashes, always remembering, always preparing. Our weapons exist because we vowed never to be victims again. So this is revenge, concluded Orin, a gaseous entity contained in an environmental suit. "No," Reed replied firmly. "If revenge were our goal, the Draxian homeworld would already be a memory. We came to end their empire, not their existence." The meeting continued for hours as the representatives debated the future. Some called for the complete destruction of Draxian civilization. Others advocated for a more measured approach. As the ET discussions proceeded, Reed received an urgent communication from Athena. "Captain, we've detected a concerning development. Long-range scans show the Draxians are activating a device on their homeworld. Energy signatures match theoretical models for quantum cascade technology." Reed's expression darkened. "A doomsday weapon." He excused himself from the conference and returned to the bridge. "Athena, show me the device." The holographic display revealed a massive installation buried beneath the Draxian capital city. Energy readings were off the charts. "Analysis?" Reed asked. "If activated, the quantum cascade would create a chain reaction capable of destabilizing all matter within approximately 2 light-years. It would destroy not only their homeworld but several inhabited planets in nearby systems." Reed stared at the display in disbelief. They would rather destroy themselves and their neighbors than lose their empire. He opened a direct channel to the Draxian High Command. "This is Captain Reed. We have detected your quantum cascade device. Deactivate it immediately." The High Chancellor's image appeared, his body now glowing with the defiant red of a cornered predator. "You have destroyed everything we built over centuries. If our civilization must end, we will ensure it does so on our terms." The atmosphere on the Reckoning's bridge was tense as Reed assessed the situation. The quantum cascade device would continue its activation sequence for approximately 6 hours before reaching critical mass. Once it passed the threshold, not even the advanced technology of the human fleet could stop the chain reaction. "Options?" Reed asked his senior staff. Commander Lee, tactical officer, spoke first. "A precision strike could disable the device, but it's buried deep beneath their capital. Collateral damage would be significant." Lieutenant Park, science officer, offered an alternative. "We could attempt to contain the cascade effect with a localized space-time bubble, but we'd need to be directly above the device when it activates. Survival probability would be less than 30%. Reed considered both options grimly. Either way, innocent Draxians would die, civilians who had no say in their government's decisions. "There's another possibility," suggested Athena, the ship's AI. "The quantum cascade technology appears to be based on principles similar to our own reality anchors. With modifications, we might be able to establish a harmonic interference pattern that would safely dissipate the energy." "Can it be done remotely?" Reed asked. "No, The equipment would need to be physically installed at 4 points surrounding the device, which means a ground team, Reed concluded, on a hostile world with billions of terrified Draxians. The plan took shape quickly. 4 teams would deploy to the Draxian homeworld, each carrying a modified reality anchor. They would need to breach the planetary defense grid, infiltrate the heavily populated capital, and position their devices with precision, all while evading Draxian security forces. Reed insisted on leading one of the teams himself despite his officers' objections. The Draxians need to see that humans are willing to risk their lives to save Draxian civilians, he explained. This isn't just about stopping a weapon. It's about breaking a cycle of retribution that's lasted 7 centuries. As preparations continued, Reed met again with the representatives of the liberated species. He explained the situation candidly, including the risk to his own forces. "You would sacrifice human lives to save Draxians?" asked Tark incredulously. "After what they did to your world? To all our worlds?" "Yes," Reed replied simply. "Because that's the difference between justice and vengeance." After a moment of stunned silence, Gala, the scarred Prel, stepped forward. "My people know the capital's security systems better than anyone. We maintained them as slaves for generations. I offer myself as guide to one of your teams. 1 by 1. Representatives from other species volunteered assistance. Knowledge of Draxian vulnerabilities, communication frequencies, urban layouts. What had begun as a human operation transformed into a multi-species rescue mission. Hours later, Reed's shuttle pierced the Draxian atmosphere, using advanced stealth technology to evade detection. 3 similar craft followed, each heading for its designated position around the capital. The city below was in chaos. News of the Empire's collapse had reached the general population, triggering widespread panic. Draxian security forces struggled to maintain order while the privileged elite scrambled to evacuate on the few remaining starships. Reed's team, consisting of 5 human special forces operators and Gala, the Prel volunteer, landed in an industrial sector. They moved through shadowed streets, avoiding Draxian patrols and civilian crowds. "The security center is ahead," Gala whispered, pointing to a towering structure of twisted metal and glowing energy conduits. "The access point to the underground complex is inside." As they approached, a squadron of Draxian guards emerged from the building. Reed signaled his team to take cover, but it was too late. They had been spotted. "Intruders!" shouted the lead guard, his body flashing warning patterns. "Secure the perimeter." Reed made a split-second decision. "Non-lethal measures only," he ordered his team. "We're not here to kill Draxians." The humans deployed sonic disruptors and neural inhibitors, weapons designed to incapacitate without permanent harm. The Draxian guards, expecting deadly force, were unprepared for these unfamiliar tactics. Within moments, they lay unconscious, but alive. "You could have killed them easily," Gala observed, sounding almost disappointed. "That's not our mission," Reed replied as they entered the security center. "Athena, guide us to the installation point." Following the AI's directions, they descended deep beneath the capital. The Quantum Cascade Devices control center was located in a vast underground chamber surrounded by elaborately designed security systems, all of which were currently unmanned. The Draxian technicians had fled, abandoning their posts as news of the impending doom spread. Only one figure remained: Elder Crix, the ancient keeper of Draxian secrets. "I've been expecting you, Captain Reed," the old Draxian said, his body glowing with the calm blue of resignation. "Come to witness our final moments?" Reed approached the ancient Draxian cautiously, signaling his team to secure the perimeter of the vast chamber. The Quantum Cascade device dominated the center, a towering structure of crystalline components and pulsing energy fields, already in the middle stages of its activation sequence. "I've come to stop this," Reed replied, holding up the modified reality anchor. "There's no need for your people to die." Elder Crix's body rippled with an emotion Reed couldn't interpret. "After all we've done, the attack on your world's centuries, the subjugation of countless species, Even now, our leaders would rather destroy everything than surrender their power. Why would humans show mercy where we have shown none? Reed placed the reality anchor on the floor and began calibrating it. Because someone has to break the cycle. 700 years ago, your empire attacked Earth out of fear of what we might become. We rebuilt, holding on to that pain, letting it drive us to develop weapons and ships that could ensure it never happened again. He looked up from his work, meeting the Elder's compound eyes. But when we finally developed the technology to strike back, our leaders faced a choice: become the very thing we had feared and hated for centuries, or find another way. Through his communicator, Reed received confirmation that the other 3 teams had successfully positioned their devices. All 4 reality anchors were online, ready to create the harmonic interference pattern that would safely dissipate the quantum cascade. "Athena, begin the sequence," he ordered. The reality anchors activated simultaneously, projecting invisible fields that intersected at the heart of the Draxian doomsday weapon. The chamber filled with an eerie resonance as the anchors worked, to counteract the building cascade effect. "It's not enough," reported Athena through Reed's communicator. "The cascade has progressed further than our models predicted. Current probability of containment, 42%. Elder Crix watched the humans' efforts with fascination. "You truly are trying to save us, even now." Reed turned to his team. "Evacuate to the surface. Get clear of the complex." "Captain," protested his second-in-command, "we're not leaving you." "That's an order, Commander." Reed cut him off. "Get Gala and the team to safety." As his team reluctantly withdrew, Reed approached the quantum cascade device's control panel. "Athena, if I manually adjust the reality anchors to create a more focused interference pattern, what happens to our containment probability?" "It would increase to 91%, the AI responded. "But Captain, that would require remaining within the chamber until the cascade reaches its peak. Survival probability in that scenario is less than 5%. Reed began the adjustments. "Sometimes leadership means being willing to do what you ask of others." Elder Crix moved to Reed's side, his ancient body now glowing with a color Reed hadn't seen before, a deep, resolute purple. "You will need assistance. The final calibration requires simultaneous adjustment of controls on opposite sides of the chamber." Reed hesitated. "You understand what this means? If we fail, then we die together," Crix finished. "But if we succeed, my people will know that a human captain and a Draxian elder worked side by side to save them. A new story for a new era." For the next hour, Reed and Crix worked in tandem, following Athena's calculations to precisely tune the reality anchors. Around them, the quantum cascade device pulsed with increasingly dangerous energy as it approached critical mass. Throughout the Draxian homeworld, civilians looked up at the sky in terror as strange energy patterns formed in the atmosphere, a visible manifestation of the catastrophe building below. Many had already fled to shelters, believing their final moments had arrived. In orbit, the Reckoning's crew monitored the situation with growing concern. The other 3 human teams had returned to their ships, but their captain remained below. "Energy levels approaching critical threshold," reported Athena to both the ship and to Reed's communicator. 10 seconds to cascade initiation." In the chamber, Reed made the final adjustment to his reality anchor. Across the room, Elder Crix did the same. 5 seconds, counted Athena. 4, 3. Reed looked across at the ancient Draxian who had devoted his final moments to saving a civilization that had lost its way. "Whatever happens," Reed said, "it was an honor." Crix's body pulsed once with acknowledgement. 2, 1. The quantum cascade device reached critical mass. Energy surged through the chamber, building toward an explosion that would unmake reality itself within 2 light years. But instead of expanding outward, the energy met the invisible barrier created by the reality anchors. For a moment that seemed eternal. 2 opposing forces, destruction and containment, battled for supremacy. Then, gradually, the cascade began to collapse in on itself, the deadly energy dissipating into harmless background radiation. the chamber filled with a blinding light, then darkness. When emergency power restored minimal illumination, Reed found himself still standing, surrounded by the smoking ruins of the quantum cascade device. Nearby, Elder Crix lay on the floor, his body dim but still showing signs of life. "Athena," Reed called. "Status report." "Quantum cascade successfully contained, Captain," the AI responded, detecting minimal radiation leakage well within safe parameters. "The Draxian homeworld is secure." News of what happened spread quickly. The human captain who had risked his life to save billions of Draxians. The elder who had chosen to help him. Within days, the story reached every corner of what had once been the Draxian Empire. 1 month later, a historic conference convened aboard the human flagship. Representatives from all former subjugated species attended, including a delegation from the now humbled Draxian homeworld, led by a recovered Elder Crix. The Galactic Concordat was signed, a treaty establishing boundaries, rights, and mutual defense among all participating worlds. The former empire would become a loose confederation of equal partners, with no species holding dominion over another. Captain Reed, awarded humanity's highest honors for his actions, stood at the ceremony's conclusion to address the delegates. 700 years ago, 2 species met in fear and responded with violence, he said. Today we choose a different path. The Draxians once believed they knew the meaning of power, the ability to conquer, to dominate, to destroy. But true, power lies in the courage to extend a hand when every instinct cries for a fist, in the strength to save those who would have destroyed you, in the wisdom to build what can last rather than merely what can terrify. He looked around the chamber at the assembled representatives, beings of incredible diversity, united in a fragile but real peace. They thought they knew power. Then the human warship arrived and showed them that the greatest power of all is the power to break the cycle, to choose mercy over vengeance, creation over destruction. That is humanity's gift to the stars. That is our true reckoning.